Hello, America, and to our friends around the world, dwindling as you may be, but we're glad you're here. I'm Dave Hodges. This is the Common Sense Show, and we are the show that is freeing America, and hopefully freeing America one enslaved mind at a time, as well as one soul at a time. We defend God, family, country, and the oppressed, and we take that very seriously. And we are decidedly Christian. So, but you don't have to be here. I think there's secular things you can take out of these broadcasts. In this particular broadcast, we're going to expand on the theme we started. We started with Caitlin Clark. When one of us isn't safe, none of us are safe. And certainly the WNBA, if I were in the DOJ doing my job, I'd be investigating them for racketeering, encouraging organized abuse against one person, particularly with civil rights violations hanging over this, because things have been said that lead me to that conclusion. And we covered that in some detail. And then we also looked at something that I think that everyone should be really concerned about, and that's TPUSA. If you disagree with the official conclusion of the demise of Charlie Kirk, well, we're going to come after you. And we're going to use the government to come after you. This is ridiculous. And we can look at things about people's behavior. And if you're a public figure or a public institution, you have to prove that you know we're lying at the time we said it. And we made that point crystal clear. And we're saying we're going to keep talking until Charlie gets justice. And listen, have you seen the response to you people out there at TPUSA doing what you're doing? Have you seen the response? These people aren't going away. Now, you'll get some people to back down. I don't think most people are going to back down because most people know the law. Anyway, that's the first two parts. In this third part, we're going to do something that is really concerning. President Trump signed National Security Presidential Memorandum 7, and it starts out being truthful. Yeah, they usually do. In every lie, in every deceit, there's an element of truth. If you just go back in history and look at the history books, and I learned this from my own German refugee family, is that before Hitler went after Jewish people, particularly in the professions and banning them from certain professions, he said, our society is in chaos. And that was true. And there was a lot of violence. That was also true. And government's duty is to keep you safe. Well, that's true too. So we got three true statements. And the problem behind everything here are Jewish people. So therefore, we're going to deal with them. Totally illegitimate. Totally. Totally. And I'm sensitized to this, being a descendant of German refugees on my dad's side of the family. But we're looking at the same thing here with National Security Presidential Memorandum number 7. It's not on the level of what Hitler did yet. Because when you compile lists and you try to squelch people and you want to discriminate against people's First Amendment right, and you begin to categorize belief system as terrorism and things that have nothing to do with terrorism, but you're lumping it all together so you can use the full force of the federal government against people that disagree with you, that is a huge problem. I do expect there to be many lawsuits over this from public interest law firms. And I will personally donate to those law firms that bring those lawsuits because this is illegitimate. Now, let me say this on the record. Any threats of violence, any doxing of public officials like ICE agents, policemen, judges, and so forth, that's illegal. And it needs to be dealt with under the full force of law. I agree with that. And this document says that. See, they start off with things that we all agree on. I do not believe in using violence to solve these problems. However, I have been infamous or famous for being really unhappy with government with regard to taking corporate campaign donations, unregistered lobby from Israel named AIPAC, taking 94% of Congress taking donations from an unregistered agent, which is illegal under our laws. And I have said these people need to be voted out of office. And I said we should start something called tossthemall.com. Uh-oh, you'll see how I might fit into now being a terrorist for encouraging people to collectively take political action. Nonviolent, not doxing, not disrupting government function, using the available resources that are given to the discretion of the voting public. But let's see, Democrats can organize, Republicans can organize, TPUSA can organize for Israel First. But if we do it at the grassroots level, and all we want to do is vote people out, and we're giving reasons why, we could be lumped in as terrorists. We should all be really, really concerned about this because my issue with, say, data centers, Christian persecution, abuse of Caitlin Clark, and no official law enforcement action, my issues may not be your issues, but your issues may be subject to the same prejudice and unfair treatment that you'd find in an autocratic government, not a constitutional republic. And this is where I draw the line. And I want to remind government officials here that we're actually going to look at what the Bible has to say at the end of all this, because you are standing on nationalism and Christianity, but there is not very much Christian about what you're doing in some parts of this document. And we're going to call that out. So stop masquerading, saying this is to protect Christians. I'm a Christian. I don't want this kind of protection. I want protection against churches being burned down, Christians being assaulted because of their faith, or being fired because of their faith. Yeah, I'll take that protection, and we should have it. But you're going too far. You are going too far. We're going to talk about this in some detail. Okay, well, let me break here with that train of thought. And I want to just go to, after the quick break, I want to go to the actual document. I've highlighted some points and then I summarize some of it too. So I think this is really, really critically important that we expose this because we can't let this government get away. This kind of reminds me of the Ellsberg papers. Do you remember that Pentagon papers? Do you remember that? He had to go to the Supreme Court to avoid going to prison because he revealed documents about how the Vietnam War was rigged in the beginning, and the conducting of the war wasn't what the American people were being told. And they tried to put him in jail for, you got state secrets, we're throwing you in jail. Well, that's the kind of the time we're in right now, people. We're going back to this now, and increasingly our government has tried to become extremely autocratic. And I think that's a very accurate term. So we'll get into that here. We're brought to you by 7702. If you got some money and you say, do I go to the bank and do I lose 5 to 6% a year on my total money and buying power because of inflation, which is only going to get worse? Yeah, only going to get worse. So what do you do? Well, you should buy some gold, back up a good portion of it. But do you really want to turn that money into a money-making engine? IULs, life insurance, health, end of life, all these things combined. The rich have used this for decades to get filthy rich and not pay taxes, perfectly legal under IRS code 7702. And my friends at Ironhawk Financial through Joe Lombardi has cracked the code. They've been doing this successfully for people now for a couple of years, and now they're making it available to you. This is phenomenally opportunistic right now for you. If you're sitting on some money, this is exactly what you should be looking at doing. Now, how do you find out more? Well, let me say that first of all, comfort factor. They're not going to push you. In about 3 minutes, they'll tell you whether this is right for you or not right for you. And if it's not right for you, they'll tell you immediately. They don't want to waste your time or theirs. And they'll direct you maybe in a different direction. It might be more beneficial for you and nothing that they have anything to do with. And then secondly, if it is good for you, be prepared. It's going to be a 30, 60, or at the most a 90-day process because they dot every I, cross every T. They got to obey every federal regulation. And Joe has never had a Better Business Bureau complaint, A+ rating, and never lost a dime of money of anyone he's ever worked with. Phenomenal record. And you can trust this guy. So what you need to do is go to dhawk.com, dhawk.com, put in your contact information. They'll be in touch with you, and you could be on your way to unbelievable benefits, tax-free. And by the way, this is recession-proof. All right, let's take a look at this document here. I'm going to bring this up. Okay, so here we are. Welcome to the golden age of the White House. It started out being the golden age. Remember Doge and how effective that was? USAID. Wow, those were some of the greatest days in American government history where they actually cleaned their own house. basically got rid of the Department of Education at the federal level. They never did anything for a classroom. I was a teacher for years. There was no benefit to that. All we heard were their woke policies and spending money on nonsense and not real education. They didn't fund speed reading classes, second language class. They didn't do that stuff. So he did some good things, but now here we are. Here we are, National Security Presidential Memorandum NSPM-7. Okay. It's gone to the Secretary of Treasury, the Attorney General, the Secretary of Homeland Security. Subject: countering domestic terrorism and organized political violence. Okay, now remember, every lie or every obfuscation of civil liberty starts with a truthful statement. Usually it's for your safety. Okay, here we go. Section 1. Heinous assassinations and other acts of political violence in the United States have dramatically increased in recent years, even in the aftermath of the horrifying assassination of Charlie Kirk. And let's not forget the president, the victim of at least 2 assassinations. I think it's closer to 4. Another topic for another time. And then he goes back and references Brett Kavanaugh. Yeah, that was a big deal, getting inside the Supreme Court justice home and trying to do harm. I mean, Kavanaugh's lucky to be alive. So these are all true statements. I agree with stopping this. The document goes on to say, this is a culmination of sophisticated, organized campaigns of targeted intimidation, radicalization, threats, and violence designed to silence opposing speech. No, what they're doing is silencing opposing speech. Key word here is intimidation. So if I come on here and I'm criticizing Kash Patel and his mishandling of the Charlie Kirk investigation, okay, I'm not doxing him. I'm not saying that he should be threatened or harmed in any way. I think it'd be appropriate how he's botched this and how he refused to give Joe Kent, the head of counterterrorism, Tulsi Gabbard, the DNI, his boss, how he refused to give them information about foreign involvement in the Charlie Kirk assassination. That's public record, folks. And he refused. I said he should be fired on that basis. That's not targeting. That's called political activism and having a political opinion. And removal from office from an appointed figure of an agency of the federal government is a legitimate excuse for me to come forward and say he should be out. But see, they want to take this away. They also say they want to change or direct policy outcomes. Yeah, I want to have influence in my government. I want them to follow their own rules. That's the big deal. Well, look at this. This is called a problem for them. They don't want you to change your direct policy outcomes. And it says prevent the functioning of a democratic society. No, criticizing the government and its officials without threatening them is one of the hallmark traits of our constitutional republic. It can't function without it. It's bad enough we've got a media that's owned by the corporate interests, 98% of it owned by 6 corporations. That's bad enough. So it's really left to the people and the independent media to say, we think this is wrong. We think this is a violation of constitutional law. This is a violation of statute. We have the right to do that, but they're trying to take that right away. And they're trying to lump it all together under, well, it's just a small hop, skip, and a jump to assassinating public officials, doxing them for harm. No one's advocating that here on the Common Sense Show. In fact, I speak against that. But I also defend the right to criticize and, if necessary, through the political means available to us, to remove officials who violate their constitutional oaths. Am I in trouble now for saying that? I don't know. I might be. Let's go on and see. They identify the areas that they're going after. First of all, they say that we begin by isolating and dehumanizing specific targets. Anyone responsible for the murder of Charlie Kirk, a man who was just teaching the young how to exercise the democratic processes and doing it under the banner of Jesus Christ, yeah, I'm pretty upset about that. And they're depraved human beings. They will be judged down the road if they don't repent. But in this lifetime, they should face punishment. But if we say that, we're dehumanizing specific targets. You see the clever words there? By criticizing them, calling them bad people, we're dehumanizing them. They're trying to criminalize this. And look at the venues that they talk about: chat forums, in-person meetings, and social media. So when I criticize Kash Patel, for his just a joke of an investigation with Charlie Kirk, 30-06, paving over the crime scene, hmm cleaning out the SUV, not preserving that crime scene, selling the SUV. Yeah. Oh, if I say that on social media, I'm dehumanizing the FBI director. No, I'm criticizing because he obviously is involved in a cover-up, in my humble opinion, and that's my right to say that. Continuing on, okay, a pattern of terroristic activities under the umbrella of self-described anti-fascism. So if I say the relationship between the federal and state governments and some local governments with the purveyors of the data center, so Amazon, Google, Peter Thiel, Sam Altman, this whole crew, and the federal government's made it illegal for states and cities to move against these data centers. Okay, that's fascism. Fascism is designed as the marriage between business and government, and we're supposed to have them separate. We know they're not, but when you marry them, that's fascism. And when government defends business over the rights of the people, not to have ambient temperature go up 5 degrees in the vicinity of a data center, not to have the water polluted or the water to be drained, the electrical bills to go up 17% like they did for me last year. When you look at all this, that's fascism, the marriage of government and business. But if you say that, they're categorizing that now as terrorism. This is so bad, people. This is this is as bad as the fusion centers and the stuff they were doing under Obama. Okay, common threads animating this violent conduct include, look at this, anti-Americanism. Okay, well, I'm going to celebrate our 250th anniversary. Fly the flag, wear the shirt, okay, and be proud that we've lasted this long. Our continuation as a constitutional republic is in jeopardy because of documents like this. That doesn't make me anti-American. Because I criticize American legislators that aren't following the laws that we set forth as a people through the Constitution, that doesn't make me anti-American. They're anti-American because they're not following their own rules. Look at this, anti-capitalism. They're saying now, if you oppose a data center, you're an anti-capitalist. No, they're practicing the opposite of capitalism. That's free enterprise. Did anybody ask your community if they wanted data centers with all that comes with it? And I'm using data centers as a pervasive example. But how about the war in Iran that's driving your gas prices up? And now it's rumored we're going to really expand that war. I'll cover that later. Okay, did anybody, they think it's okay? And then this is going to culminate, I think, in a draft? Exactly. Are you allowed to say that? Now, keep in mind, I am a committed Christian, imperfect, wish I was better, but I am imperfect. I admit that. But look at this. They want to go after people who are anti-Christian. What does that mean? So if you have a Muslim father tell his kids none of this Bible stuff, no Jesus stuff, I don't agree with that personally. But under our laws in the First Amendment, the freedom of religion, it's allowed. Now, is that person allowed to take negative, punitive actions towards Christians? No, no. But the way this is worded, if you express anti-Christian views, they can come after you. I don't want people saying anti-Christian things, but they have a right to say it under our system of law. Support for the overthrow of the United States government. What do you think about that, ladies and gentlemen? Boy, is that amazing. Support for the overthrow of the United States government. Have you heard? I haven't heard anyone who's unhappy with MAGA that voted for Donald Trump saying we need a revolution. I haven't heard anybody say that. I'm hearing them say, Trump, get back on track. Do what you said you were going to do when you ran for office, like you did in the first 9 months of your presidency, which was a great thing. I saw tremendous things in that first 9 months, but I don't see much of it now. Let's continue with this. Okay, you can't criticize American views on family, religion, or morality. Whose morality? Whose? There's lifestyles out there that I wholeheartedly disagree with, but I don't support the persecution of them. I don't support firing them in the workplace, throwing them in jail. So, whose morality and religion and family views are we talking about? Does this even belong in a government document on terrorism? I mean, do you understand how bad this is? Continuing. The United States requires a national strategy to investigate, disrupt networks, entities, and organizations that foment political violence. I agree, violence, not criticism, so that law enforcement can intervene in criminal conspiracies before they result in violent political acts. Did you ever see that movie with Tom Cruise? Remember that? They talked about predictive policing. This is what this is before they result in political acts. So I say we need to stop the spread of data centers. We need to do this politically, and we need to make it clear to politicians if they don't support this, we're going to unelect them or even recall them from office. We'll protest outside their office on the sidewalk. Did you hear me say anything about violence? Doxing? No, no. But look at what they're saying here. Can intervene in criminal conspiracies before they result in violent political acts. So what if someone, because I go on here and I say, okay, we need to recall the governor of the XYZ state because of his position on whatever. And then someone in another state goes and assassinates that person. Is that going to be pinned back to me? I'm inciting violence when all I've done is call for political action. This is where every American needs to really be leery about how far this could be stretched. Okay, continuing. Investigating domestic terrorist organizations. This National Joint Terrorism Task Force shall coordinate and supervise comprehensive national strategy to investigate, prosecute, and disrupt entities and individuals engaged in acts of political violence. And here's the key word, intimidation. So when I say the people who are defending the current situation with Charlie Kirk, and they're provably lying, they provably contradicted each other. And so we call them out and criticize them. And they also have no problem, these same people, taking our kids and letting them fight Israel's war against Iran by putting boots on the ground. Oh, trust me, you're going to want to stay tuned for the next segment. This is a problem, ladies and gentlemen. This is a huge problem. So what I'm saying to you right now is this. Okay, they're stretching things from true statements, we don't want violence, we shouldn't have threats, to where if you say and criticize and call for political action, you're intimidating. There was already a man arrested charged with 2 felonies for intimidation, as he was really felony intimidation, and because he was calling for the removal of a public official that was fine with data centers against public approval. Yeah, some of this is already happening. This is scary, scary stuff. Okay. Let me scroll down here to the next part of this. The Attorney General shall direct the DOJ to prosecute all federal crimes to the maximum extent permissible. Wow. Okay. Now, they also include, here's what they say. Doxing, agree, should be a crime. Swatting, agree. Rioting, looting, trespassing, assault, destruction of property, threats of violence. I totally agree with saying these are crimes and should be prosecuted. Listen to this. And civil disorder. What's civil disorder? We're going to take you from office. We are going to unelect you. Is that civil disorder? Is it? They don't define the term, so it can be broadly applied. I guess one of my drawbacks here is being a former teacher. Remember, I spent 4.5 years teaching graduate students how to do their dissertations. So we talked a lot about research strategies. Operationalizing your terms is the first thing you have to do. You must have clear and concise definitions, and this does not. Now, if they put USC code section 18, blah, blah, blah in there, we could go to that and see what it says. and maybe it's operationalized there, but they don't even refer to this to an outside rule. This is so bad, people. This is so bad. Okay. And they're going to go after networks that fund domestic terrorism and violence. Hello, welcome to Trudeau's Canada. Remember the Canadian trucker strike? First of all, Trudeau went and seized all their bank accounts. And if someone gave them a pizza or bought them a cup of coffee, they had their bank accounts stolen by the government too. Now, later, this was undone by court action, but not until people lost homes, got evicted from apartments, lost jobs. This is what this looks like to me. This is Canadian trucker law part 2 here in America. Okay, now they want your snitches, East German Stasi style. The secretary shall provide guidance for financial institutions to file suspicious activity reports. Unbelievable. The commissioner of the IRS shall take action to ensure that no tax-exempt entities are directly or indirectly financing political violence or domestic terrorism. Agreed. But when you read the paragraph above that, they got wide discretion on how they define their terms. Okay, so here is this is just absolutely amazing. Now they're actually defining some terms. Assaulting federal officers, 18 USC, Section 111. Conspiracy against rights. This is really nebulous. What rights would those be? 18 USC 241. I looked that up and I'm still asking the question. What rights are we talking about? The right not to be criticized or the right to freedom of speech to criticize public officials? That's not really clear from what they're quoting here. Conspiracy to commit offense under 18 USC 3, that's vague too. Solicitation to commit a crime of violence. We agree with that. Money laundering. We agree with that. Funding of terrorist acts, otherwise facilitating terrorism, as long as it's terrorism in the traditional sense and not violation of First Amendment. Okay, you can see what a bunch of nonsense this is. Now, what I did here was a real detailed analysis of this. Most of this stuff is up on an article I wrote on thecommonsenseshow.com. You're going to want to go look at this. And I go through and I talk about practical considerations and precedents. And then I want to close with this. What I'm doing is biblical. It's not just constitutional saying I'm really concerned about how far this is going to go. And some of it's already gone too far. Government authority and its limits, Romans 13 versus Acts 5. And I talk in here, Romans 13 says, do what the government says until it violates rules. Okay? And if you look at this, when government tells you to do something that violates the Bible, you're not obligated to follow it as a Christian. Now, Jesus was put to death because he didn't go along with the Sadducees, the Pharisees. Pontius Pilate didn't go along with that. He paid for it with his life, but that was the plan. He had to die for the obvious reasons. Okay? But here is the bottom line here. We must obey God rather than man. And a lot of this is setting up so you can't criticize Israel and the merging of the militaries. Freedom of speech and conscience, okay? If you look at Scripture commands us to speak truth in love, Ephesians 4:15, and expose darkness, not to self-censor out of fear of investigation. That's pretty much what I think I just did here. And I think I'm on strong spiritual grounds here. And then finally, you look at this. The Spirit of the Lord is upon me to proclaim liberty to the captives. Luke 4:18, a liberty that includes freedom of conscience. Silence in the face of evil was condemned by the prophets, Ezekiel 3:17 through 21, the watchman principle. That's why I talked about Caitlin Clark at the top of this series. The abuse she's going through is not just dirty play, it's criminal assault. It's repetitive criminal assault that's sanctioned by authorities, namely the league office. I have all this up here on the website if you want to go look at it. Anyway, I'm Dave Hodges. Am I upset? Yeah, this is a big deal. This is a really big deal, people, because we have the right to redress our grievances. That's a constitutional liberty under the First Amendment. And that right, because of these broad terminologies here, is in jeopardy because the wrong people could read this in a way that's criminalized what I've just done here today. Have you heard me say we should hurt someone, intimidate someone, park outside their house and intimidate them? Hell, TPUSA did that to Aubrey Litch when she left and started talking. Her husband caught him videotaping, and he videotaped them, and that's been on YouTube. That was okay for them to do, but if you do that, you're going to jail. Yeah, listen, we're going to have to make some collective political decisions. Let me just remind you, you have an unregistered lobby that's foreign, that's influencing political decisions made in Congress. They don't have to register under FARA, which is unconstitutional and illegal, and nothing's happening. You have corporations that buy elections. You have foreigners that buy elections. Thomas Massey's defeat, $32 million from the Israeli lobby. Are you okay with that, with foreigners coming in to determine who's going to serve in Congress? But see, pretty soon we're going to have that speech outlawed. I'm not going to be able to say that. That's called anti-Semitic. And let me remind you, my grandmother's maiden name was Freiberg. I'm not anti-Semitic in the least. I'm pro-Constitution. I'm America first. Well, actually, I'm God first, America second. I'm Dave Hodges. Are you ready to roll up your sleeves and become politically active legally and above board to change the people that won't honor our time-honored traditions and the Constitution? I think it's time for a change. We thought we were getting rid of woke, and for the most part we have, but we've traded it for an autocratic form of government that's very threatening. And I think it's only going to grow if we don't stop it here. You know who I am. You know what we're about. You know where to find me. Thanks for joining us.